Hi there. Today I would like to talk about my childhood. It's not something that I like to talk about. Um, it's hard for me to talk about, but I think that it would be very helpful to parents and young autistic people to hear my story and how it all started for me to where I got today, which is in a really, really good place. So I'll try and make it as brief as possible. You know, attention span of today isn't always the best for most people. So here goes. The earliest memory I have of being a child is eating a slug. I was two. I almost choked to death, and I remember opening it up and just being fascinated of what was inside. I just had this crazy sense of curiosity that I just needed to know what was inside. It didn't occur to me that I was hurting a living creature. I was two. I just wanted to know what was inside. You know, how did it work? Now that curiosity has stayed with me for life. You know, I always, not that I want to open up animals and see how they work, I just want to know how things work. I've always wanted to know how things work. Now, I think that it's important to remember, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately, that my neurodiversity comes from many different forms. It's I'm autistic, I'm ADHD, I'm OCD, and I'm also a genius. Now, a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, that's just a brag," or that's or you think you're better, and no one seems to get offended when I say, "Oh," or no one seems to get their back up if I say, "Oh, I'm autistic," or "I'm an ADHD." But being a genius is also neurodiversity, because when you're a genius, you are very, very separate from the rest of the world. You think very differently, you act very differently. So, being an autistic ADHD genius child means meant that I was incredibly separated from everyone, and my understanding of other people's behaviours was like I was on an alien planet. I just I was fascinated of how everything worked, but it was so strange. I just I'm there. I have all the knowledge, but it still just didn't make any sense why people would do things the way they would do them. And of course, as a child, I would then verbalize that. So my second memory would be when I was about four, and I would meet my adopted brother for the first time. He came to live with us. He came from an abused family, and my parents took him in. He was 15, and I remember sitting on the stairs and just being amazed by this cool young guy who's like an older brother. Basically, was going to come and live with us. I'd only had older sisters, and this was an older brother. It was like really, really cool. So that's another memory I had, and I always got on so well with my older brother. He just seemed to get me. He would always do stuff with me because my dad was autistic, and he was very he was also a genius. That's where it's come down from. He was so clever that he almost got trapped in his own mind, and he would just be obsessed with computers, PCs. I mean, the PCs we use today, my dad had a lot to do with 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 making them work, with designing, with communications. He was involved in the first communication of the internet, and because he worked for BT, he was like really really high up in BT. So he didn't have a lot of time for me. So I was very very lonely in the fact that I would try and make friends with kids my age. This is when I was a bit older, but it didn't really seem to work. They always thought I was childish. Now I wasn't non-verbal, but I barely talked. I barely spoke when I was younger. My developmental delays are unknown to me. I've never really discussed it with my mother, who I no longer talk to. All I do know from talking to my older sisters is that I was very very childish. I would have meltdowns, or back in those days it was temper tantrums if I didn't get what I wanted. But it was, I know how that felt. I remember how that felt, and it's like I would be taken up to London for Christmas time. We always went to London for Christmas time to see the lights, and I'd get to meet Father Christmas, and you'd get a gift, but I was always excited to do that. It was an exciting thing to do, but it was terrifying. I mean, I hate trains. I hate trains now as a grown 37-year-old man. I hate trains, and London wasn't as busy back then, but come Christmas time, it was busy. And then I'd always, and I remember particularly on a bus when we were going from one place to another, and I just had a meltdown. I'm pretty sure my parents, or especially my mum, would have just blamed me for being a bad child. It's what she always told me. I was just a bad child, and my nan would tell me I'm a bad child, and the teachers would tell me I'm a bad child. But I don't remember any reason at the time for me being upset other than I felt upset. I had no control, absolutely no control over it. And my mum, she gave me one of my early Christmas presents. So she gave me a Ghostbuster. And I calmed down, and I just started like concentrating on this Ghostbuster and playing with it. And then I was fine. So from the outside perspective, it looks like I've had a temper tantrum. I wanted a toy. I got a toy, and then I was happy. But it wasn't. I had a meltdown. My mum gave me a toy because she thought it might make me feel better. And then because I was able to concentrate on that toy, I wasn't concentrating on all the noise and all the hustle and bustle and all the sensory issues that I had afterwards. So it was difficult. But the fact is, I think because I was sort of put into these situations, I kind of, as I grew up, I just felt that was the norm. I didn't like it. I wasn't comfortable with it. But I just went and did it. And I think that's always come from my older brother. He was a strong, amazing man, and he would go and do things, and I would want to do those things with him. So I had to sort of, strengthen myself inside in order to sort of push myself through boundaries that I didn't think I was capable of. And because he was like, well, you don't have to do it, or you can come with me and do these things, like going off-roading and joining in, going swimming or, camping and, doing the things that I would normally not want to do because I would just want to stay at home or something. It would be like, well, you can either hang out with me or you cannot. And so I wanted to hang out with him because I literally worshipped him. And so I did. I just went and did those things. And I pushed myself through it. He never forced me. It was my decision. But it was a great way of pushing myself through difficulties. Because for me, being autistic, it doesn't disable me. That was my son. Nice one. It doesn't disable me. It just makes my life difficult at times. But just because something's difficult, it doesn't mean that you don't do it. And to the parents out there, just because your child is finding something difficult doesn't mean that you shouldn't encourage them to try and do it for longer or do more of it. And it is all about encouraging. You can't just sort of blame your child or force your child. But I do find that there's so many parents out there that make so many mistakes, and I know that it's not their fault. And my heart goes out to them because they don't know what it feels like. They know how their child reacts, but they don't know how it feels. And you can encourage your kids to do stuff, but at the same time, there is a limit. But what you should always remember is that your kid will have that limit, but they are capable of more. And I've had that on the photography trips when the kids have had enough and they want to go, and the parents are like, oh, okay, we're done now, we have to go. And I was like, well, let me go and talk to them. And every time I've managed to convince, just by being silly or funny or giving them a goal and saying, oh, look, just 10 more minutes or 15 more minutes, and giving them an incentive saying, oh, look, we're going to go and do this now, we're going to go and do that now, you don't want to miss out on that. It's about encouraging and not just saying, oh, we just give up, or, the polar opposite of, yeah, you're going to go and do that because I said so. And, there is a happy medium, and you've got to find it, and you've got to keep your patience, because the tone of your voice is very, very important. As a parent of an autistic child, I'm telling you right now, the tone of your voice is one of the most important things that you can do in order to help your child. So, because remember, we're hypersensitive, which means we'll be hypersensitive to your tone of voice. So you have to be careful with the tone of voice you use, because I have heard on my photography trips and other times, and I've heard on videos and things, this tone of voice that is, I have lost my patience with you, but I'm still trying to be nice, but I'm annoyed. The kid knows you're annoyed, and this kid knows you're annoyed. They're going to feel bad. They're going to have more of a meltdown, or they're going to dig in their heels more, because at the end of the day, they're upset. And when we're upset, we just shut down, and that's it. I know it's hard, but that's it. But, I remember a little bit older, when I was in class. And of course, this is the whole genius thing comes into this, because I'm in a class and it's to be fair, it's boring. Socially, I grew up very, very slowly. I mean, these pop guys, they're all mine. I'm still a big kid. Autistic people just don't really grow up. It's something to do with our neurological development during our teenage years, and it just means that we have the neurological pathways of being a child. They're still there. They weren't trimmed, so they're still there. And so we have neurological pathways of an adult, but we also have neurological pathways of a child. So we have, it comes naturally to us to be very, very childish, which means we can be very grown up, but we can also be very childish. Whereas most people, will have those neurological pathways, aren't there anymore, so they don't actually have that ability to be childish, or the need or want to be childish. But like I said, my brain works way better way better than, I think it's like 99% of everyone on the planet. I think I'm on the naught. No, it's less. It's like 0.6%. It's something ridiculous, and obviously that makes me feel very, very isolated. That my brain works on a different level. I don't know if it works better. IQ is just IQ. It doesn't actually help me day to day. It just means that my brain works at a different level, but that actually makes me really, really unhappy a lot of the times because I'm not on the same wavelength as so many people. So, and that was the same when I was a child. I'm in a class and I'm bored out of my mind because I want to do much, much more difficult things, and I'm bored out of my mind, and of course that comes across. So it's, oh, Joe doesn't concentrate in class, or Joe is easily distracted. So I'm easily distracted because I'm ADHD. I'm easily distracted because you're boring my ass off with your boring talking, because these teachers just weren't very interesting to me, and I could not concentrate on things if didn't interest me. So I just sit there reading books, my own books, and I'd bring my own books in. I'd get home and I'd read books, and I'd read so many books, and mostly fact books. I always wanted to know the facts, and then I'd go into school and I'd tell everybody facts, which is probably why no one was my friend, because no one who's that young wants to know facts. So it's like I was too old in my head for the young people, and then too childish for the older people when I'm an adult, and it's all very confusing. And but I don't really care because I'm just me, and I'm along for the ride, and at times I'm not happy, and at times I'm really happy. But you name me one person in the world that is happy all the time, because I'd love to meet that person. I think that'd be awesome. But people have difficult lives. So for me, being autistic or ADHD or a genius or OCD or whatever, it that's just part of life, you know. And you either look for the good in it or you look for the bad in it. But I can tell you which out of those two makes you happy. If you go around being miserable and always going, oh, I can't do this, or I can't do that, or I can't do this, and I can't do that, you're never going to be happy. And if you go around going, do you know what? I can do this, and they can't. Or I can do that, and they can't. Well, obviously you're going to be happy. It's not rocket science. I don't need to be a genius to figure that out. You shouldn't need intelligence to figure that out. So for all the parents and all the autistic people who are always focusing on the bad things, stop it. Just, my God, find a way. I'll help you. I'll help you find a way with these videos, or you contact me. I'll help you find a way. There are other autistic people just like me doing what I'm doing. I'm not the only one. They're out there. There is information out there. There are books. Go and read a book. My God, read a book. I've read so many books about being autistic, Asperger's, ADHD. I've read books about neurotypical teenagers, how their brains work. I read and read and read and studied and studied and studied. And I know absolutely tons of information about how my brain works, how non-autistic people's brains work, because I wanted to know. Now, how are you going to be a parent of an autistic child if you don't know how their brain works? If you haven't read all the books? Read the books. If you're autistic, read the books. If you're an autistic child, read the books. There are young people's books out there. It is all, the information is all there. It is, you just have to go and access it. We cannot be in a world where things just happen for us. You cannot depend on the so-called experts. They're not going to be there for you when you need them. But you can be there for your kids, and you can be there for yourself, because you can just access that information, and then you'll know better. And I wish that people had accessed that information for me when I was a kid, because I'd be in class and I'd say something that I knew was correct, and the teacher would say that it wasn't. And it was one particular incident that happened where they were talking about a flying squirrel. And I said, yeah, there's a flying squirrel. The teacher said, there's not a flying squirrel. I was probably about 7. And I said, yes, there is a flying squirrel. She said there wasn't. I had an argument with her and she told me off, obviously. So I went back home after school and I went back in the next day with my book with the flying squirrel in it. And I showed her in front of the class. You know, I don't have a lot of tact when it comes to those things. And I just said, look, you're wrong. I'm right. This is a flying squirrel. It's right there. She confiscated the book and she told me off again. I mean, that's just bad teaching. I mean, she should have just said, do you know what, Joe, you're absolutely right. I apologise. But, you know, what teacher is going to apologise to a 7-year-old who's basically just showing them up? But that's the thing, is I didn't realise I'm showing her up. I'm just trying to show her that there is a flying squirrel and that I'm right. Because I hate it. 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 When I know that I'm right and people tell me I'm wrong. And I know that I'm right because I've studied it. Because I've looked into it. I didn't just come up with it in my head. This is hours and hours, hundreds of hours of research and dedication and knowledge that goes into the things that I say, and the experiences that I've had go into the things that I say. And there's like a whole wealth of information, you know, in this vast brain that I know is right. But people keep telling me, oh, you don't know that. And then I'll have to show them why. And it's tiring. And this is why I love having Google in my house, because I can just say, you know, Google, blah, 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 blah. And Google will go, yes, Joe, you're absolutely right. As always, you're basically amazing. And then my wife goes, so I love Google. So yeah, I'm a kid, and another one of my early memories is that I'm. This is where it gets difficult, because this is where it went from when I was older to sort of getting badly bullied, and I mean the good thing is, you know, I go through that, and I did come out stronger, and no one bullies me now. Trust me, no one bullies me now. But it's all living in here, because I also have an eidetic memory, which means I remember things visually in absolute clarity, and it's really, you know, it is really hard. So I will give you a few examples, and then you can associate yourselves or your child with them. But always remember that while I'm telling you this, always remember that I'm okay now, and I came out of it okay, and I'm stronger because of it and despite it. So, okay. So, I had, and I have had, many friends at school age, and it was always like a one or two, you know, a small group, and inevitably they would always end up hurting me, and we'd always end up falling out, and I'd always end up feeling incredibly alone and incredibly sad, because the thing is that when I'd fall out with this person or small group, I'd always be the one left on my own. I'd always be the one that was ostracised, and then I'd end up sitting away from everyone. So I made friends with a guy, and you know, he was new to the school, so I thought, okay, you know, I'll get in there first. and he was cool. I really liked him, but then he started getting, friends with the other kids more, the ones that didn't like me. And I'd invited this guy into my house. I, told him things that I didn't tell other people. And he went and told the whole school a bunch of very private things that I told him. And then he tried to beat me up in front of everyone. Now, there is one good thing, is that I've never actually been properly beaten up, because I know how to fight. My brother taught me how to fight, and I've always been able to defend myself. And it turned out that I beat him up. So, guess who got in trouble? Me. Again. As always. Because I was able to defend myself. Because people would call me names. And they would try and hurt me. So I hurt them. But I was the one in the wrong. I'd sit in class and I'd understand the most complicated maths theories. I loved history. I loved English. I did so well in school. But all the time, it was a living nightmare. I just was constantly picked on, constantly bullied, constantly made to feel bad. How is that fair? It's not fair, is it? That a kid so smart and so full of promise would be beaten down daily, constantly. And in classes where I wasn't interested because I just didn't like the subject or it didn't enthrall me, I was then told off for not being good at those subjects or not doing my homework. It's like, if only they had just encouraged me in the things that I was good at and forgot about the things that I wasn't or I didn't care about, I would have soared. Now, at home, my mum abused me. She physically would beat me, throw things at me. She cut me with a can opener once. She would slap me a lot. And then she'd tell me she loved me. And I was her sunshine. And she would sing me the sunshine song. And she'd tell me that if all her kids were drowning, she'd jump in and save me first. And then the next thing, she'd be hitting me again. Or screaming at me. Or telling me how awful I was. And I was just like my dad. It's like, yeah, I am just like my dad. I'm autistic, you stupid cow. I've suffered through her abuse and her psychological sickness that she pushed on me for years, and I finally got out of it, and I'm a lot healthier for it. But the abuse that I received from that woman and from those children and from some teachers, mentally and physical, that has traumatized me for life. I have PTSD because of it. I have a lot of pain inside me. But I don't let it beat me. I use that pain. I use it to strengthen me. I use it to help me focus on helping other people. I use it to make me more savvy to the world that is inevitably going to hurt me. And, you know, I'm not pushed around anymore. I don't take any sort of nonsense. You know, and some people have told me that I'm aggressive. It's like, have you any idea what I've been through? And you think I'm aggressive? I'm not aggressive, I'm defensive. Of course I'm defensive. It's crazy. But I got through it. But it wasn't easy. And when I was non-verbal, when I barely talked, when I started talking, or when I started trying to talk, I actually had a stutter. So I would, like that. You know, I wasn't able to get my words out. Another thing they'd bully me for. I used to stim. So I would do this. It would make me feel better. I would just throw my head around. And that was my son again. And I got picked on for that. You know, I had things that was about. I'd get picked on for being intelligent. You know, I'd get picked on for being smart. I'd get picked on for knowing things. How dare I? You know, I tried to join in so many times, and I had toys. I mean, my parents always spoiled me. They always bought me things. You know, they always gave me the things that I wanted, the toys, so I could fit in. But I couldn't. And there was another incident where I took a basketball into school, and everybody was playing with that basketball. And I thought, oh, great, I've actually got friends. Everybody's enjoying what I'm doing. And I was so happy. I was over the moon. And some kid came over with a knife and slashed my basketball. And I thought everybody was going to be annoyed at him because he just broke the basketball. But they just laughed at me. I actually set up a basketball team at school. I went to the teacher. And I asked him if we go a basketball team. He said yes, as long as I organised it. I organised the whole thing. And once it was all put together, they threw me off the team. They just said they didn't want me in the team. And the coach let them. So I actually made the basketball team for my school. And then they pushed me out of it.